to college in 98, so I feel like it was still just around the corner, like it wasn't that far long ago. But I remember how I felt about my mental health as I was preparing to go to college and leaving my father, stepping out anew. So I was like, hey, I call her JB. Hey, JB, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about what mental health looks like as we're preparing kids for college? And what does it look like for those parents when their babies are out of their house, right? Like your baby is not in there as that safety net anymore, but also not in there as somebody that you're always having to think about and look out for and all those things. So how does it change the parent? What's the mental health look like for the parent? What does the mental health look like for the child? So I was like, hey, JB, can you come and spill the tea with me, sis? And she said, for sure. So here we are. So Jessica, tell the folks about you a little bit, and well, a lot of bit, girl, because you know you like that. So tell the folks who you are, and let's get into this convo.
My name is Jessica Brown, also known as College Girl with a U. I am the founder of course, College Gurl, and the president of the College Gurl Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization based in Washington, D.C. that primarily serves low-income minority high school youth. We provide virtual college tours, in-person college tours, mentoring, scholarships, and you name it. We do it all for these kids to ensure that they are set up for success. Additionally, I am the author of How to Pay for College When You Are Broke, and I am the author of the children's book, College Girl's First College Tour.
Yes, come on, author and all of that stuff. I get so excited. I remember opening up Essence magazine, I think over the summer, and I was like, oh, look at my sis in Essence magazine, and then doing some work around Good Morning America. I was like, look at my girl out here just doing it. So I love the work that you're doing. Before we get into the nitty gritty, tell us about what that senior year experience was like for you. So senior year going into, I believe you went to Howard, right? The real HU, Bryson, baby, you know. But tell us what that experience was like for you. I'll share a little bit about mine in a minute too.
Well, for one, I am a legacy of Howard University. My mom, her sisters, brother went there. I'm like maybe third, fourth generation Howard legacy. Howard was definitely a unique experience. At first, I didn't really want to go to an all HBCU as I was coming from a high school that had tons of different minorities. So I was looking more towards like University of Maryland College Park, as that was a mirror reflection of Rutgers University, which was based in my town. And so, my dad didn't really want me to go to all Black school. He's like, well, it's not all Black. But then again, my mom was like, no, I went to Howard, go to Howard. But going to Howard was wonderful as I was able to see that there are different types of Black, right? So as much as I thought it wasn't going to be culturally diverse, it was culturally diverse. And that's, and I definitely can say with that experience, I mean, just being able to meet Black students from Nebraska, meet Black students from Africa, meet Black students, who are maybe parents were in the Army and they're stationed in Korea. I mean, going to Howard University was very rich in terms of culture and in terms of learning. And for that reason, I really loved Howard, right? Because, now I'm experiencing all these different types of Black. I'm learning so much from so many different people. And of course, Howard is just overall just lit. We are known to have like the #1 homecoming in the country. So, being in that type of environment and all of us Black people getting together and just turning up and, wearing designer or just being a fashion show, right? Like Howard was so much inspiration, like so many young women, they would come with wigs like this, and the next thing you know, by senior year, we were natural, embracing, our culture, our ethnicity. And Howard was overall just amazing. I mean, being involved in classes with people that you just never know who they were about to become. And so that's one thing I just loved about Howard, the network, the pride. Because HU, we go hard. You are the real HU. There is no other HU. If you think there's another one, it's the Institute, So Howard was just everything. And I'm just so blessed because, and I would say that what also encouraged the experience was being in Chocolate City, being in Washington, D.C., being around that type of culture as well. And just merging the two together. I mean, there was nothing like it.
Yeah. Of course, everybody knows that I'm a graduate, a two-time graduate of Howard as well.
Two times.
And I remember, listen, girl, I love my little degrees. I'd be excited. I remember I went to high school in Korea and then graduated high school in Hawaii. My father is a veteran of the United States Army. And, but it was at around 11 that I knew I wanted to go to Howard, right? I was like, ooh, I want to be like Thurgood Marshall. I want to, work for the FBI. I want to go into the justice system and all of these things. And so that really motivated me to come to Howard. Clearly, that's not what ended up happening. I'm a therapist and a professor, and I love those things as well. But when thinking about the mental health piece, I do recall thinking, well, who am I going to be? Right? When I was in Hawaii, there were Black people, of course, because it's military, lots of military folks on the island, and then a lot of people just vacationing there or retiring there. But I was kind of like a big fish in a little pond, right? I was like the captain of the cheerleading team, and I played softball and speech and debate. And then, but then I was like, that became part of my identity. And who was I going to be in this new space? Like, I had to transition who my identity was. And I remember being a bit anxious about that. I have multiple siblings, it's four of us in total. And but I was primarily raised independently, like with just my father. And I remember thinking, how do I adjust to roommates, sharing a room with somebody? How do I figure out all of my life? I've always been independent, so living by my agenda and my schedule, but also thinking like, how do you manage hanging out on the yard and still trying to get this work done? How do you manage making new friends or deciding not to be friends with somebody and they live on your same floor in the dorm room and you got to share the laundry room with them, right? Right. I remember thinking like, am I going to be good enough? Yes, I had a great GPA in high school. Am I going to be good enough? And then while going through all of that, thinking about what my father was going through, he's losing his daughter. I'm not going to be home there with him. And I remember him disconnecting. That was his coping mechanism. That summer before I went to school, I barely saw him. Later, as we grew older and talked about it, that was his gradual way of kind of disconnecting. It felt abrupt to me and I felt lonely and isolated. Do you know this man didn't even take me to school, Jessica?
Oh, he was.
I flew from Hawaii to DC by myself, and the Army moved all of my stuff. Do you know that? But that was his way at the time. So it was his own mental health work that he was going on. And then I was a first generation college kid. So, who was I going to be turning to in terms of helping me when the pressure is real, when all those finals are happening in that 1 week, right? Who's helping me when that refund check hasn't come out yet? And I gotta eat lunch and the calf is, tripping. Like, who's gonna help me? So thinking about all those mental health things. When you're working, I know you check in on your mentees after you take them through the transition. Maybe you could talk about that process a little more. But when you check in on them, when they're in their freshman year and their sophomore year, what are some of the concerns that they're having? What are some things that we should be anticipating that many freshmen and sophomore students are experiencing in terms of their mental health?
Well, one is homesick, right? Especially with these kids being from underserved communities in Washington, D.C. Many of them have never traveled outside of D.C. unless they went on my college tour. So now the second time they're traveling, it's a permanent thing, right? Because they're going off to college. So, it's that homesickness, not knowing how to cope. Or, not knowing how to get up by yourself, right? I mean, if you have an active parent in the household that is waking you up and doing your laundry and doing all these things, and now all of a sudden you wake up one day and now you have to be independent. That is another issue because students don't know, everybody says they want to be grown, but when it's time to be grown, it's a different story. You have to wake yourself up for class. You have to remember to make sure you do your homework. These college teachers are not badgering you down to do your homework. If you don't do it, you don't do it, you fail. And
Yeah.
so a lot of students aren't used to that, right? Because they're used to being cradled. They're used to somebody always doing something for them. They're used to being a dependent. So, you know, that homesickness and then trying to transition from being a dependent person to an independent person is definitely very challenging for these students. And some of them don't know or socially awkward, right? Like they have a lot of students who really only come to Howard primarily because they went to a high school with primarily Caucasian peers.
Yeah.
So now this is a complete culture shock. Or even if the student is not in that situation, it's still a culture shock.
Yeah.
Because you're learning about the campus, you're learning the new way of the land. You know, if you're moving from Hawaii to Washington, D.C., I mean, you went from the world's most beautiful beaches to a turned up city, you know.
And I was cold, girl. JB, get this. I remember that first November, it hit 60 degrees out here, and everybody was looking cute with their sweatshirts and jeans. Girl, I was I think I was probably at like Ross or something, get a bubble coat. I was walking around Howard's campus in November in 60-degree weather with a bubble coat and a scarf, looking crazy, girl.
You thought it was cold.
Listen, it was cold to me. Everybody else was like, "Oh yeah, that must be that girl that came from Hawaii," because I was bundled up. Do you hear?
Yeah, I would have been like this.
Hey, come on, Kaden, bro, Kaden. But yeah, that culture shock.
Culture shock is so real. You know, I mean, even, you know, for everybody, even when you get older and you're moving and you're transitioning from one career to another, you know, it's a shock. You're moving from one city to another. That's a shock. So it's kind of difficult because for some people, it takes longer to adapt to an environment. You know, it's important. That's why it's so important to make sure that you have a really good mental health, you know, during that time, and think positively, because you have a lot of students come to college and all they do is nitpick. You know, I don't like my roommate. I don't like the room. I don't like this. I don't like that, you know, and at the end of the day, life you ain't gonna like, right?
Yeah.
Nothing is perfect, you know, but it's how your mindset is to those situations will make it easier to adapt or will take a little bit longer.
Yeah. It's so funny because I mentioned that, you know, my baby is going to college next year. She's a junior right now. And I luckily have the insight and the wherewithal to think about to start getting all of us prepared for her transition into college. Meaning, you know, I the comfort that I feel when I wake up in the morning and I know that she's in the house, meaning the particular skills that she needs to develop to be independent. She's a super independent kid. I trust her, she's super responsible. However, there's still some things that need to be worked out, like problem solving, communication, right? How do you communicate with your roommate? Mommy just can't come in and rescue you, right? And so how do you advocate for yourself when you feel like your teachers are not treating you fairly? How do you ask for extended time on an assignment if you actually need it? How do you manage your time? How do you manage it all? And so, although she probably wouldn't be able to articulate that, I've been preparing her for college since the start of high school. I really have been thinking about what that looks like. And I wonder what would happen if more parents were intentional about how do you prepare your child for high school? It's not something you could just do in the last few months how do you prepare them for college? It's not something you could just do in the last few months. It's something that usually take a couple years to prepare. I think that first generation students are kind of at a disadvantage for that because their parents don't know what to expect always. And so it makes it difficult to prepare based off of the experience. However, there should be some intentionality around preparedness.
Right.
At which grade level do you start getting involved in the student's life to prepare them for college?
Well, my program starts 10th grade. At first it was open from freshman year to senior year, but you know, 10th grade is really where I try to start. However, it's never too early to prepare your students for college. Before I get all the way to that point, I kind of want to double back to one point that you talked about as a parent, right? because I did have a student I was mentoring a couple of years ago. And of course, she did have some disabilities. And, when she went to college, her parent was just too involved and not allowing her to fend for herself, because her roommate was turned up at night playing music at midnight. And, she's in the bed with headphones on, the parent is calling me like, Miss Jessica, I want to go up there and let me tell that little girl a piece of my mind. If that's the case, then you shouldn't have sent your child to college. If you feel like she can't fend for herself, and the thing is, she could, just because she had some type of small learning disabilities, that didn't necessarily make her inadequate. And it was like the parent felt like she had to fight every battle for her. You can't go up there and call the roommate and tell the roommate off. You can't do that.
No.
So I also think parents have to be realistic with themselves.
Absolutely.
If you are going to send your child to college and they do come across issues, be supportive and provide strategies, but don't try to come in and interfere and try to take over, because they want to learn.
Right. That's that mindset that we were talking about before, because the children have to shift their mindset, because they're going from they're having their own cultural shock, right? But parents have to shift their mindset too, in terms of, do you want your child to be independent or dependent?
Right.
And why? And that's a real question. Most parents are going to say, well, my child is 18 and I want them to be dependent. But for some parents, we got to be real, right? Some people want their children to be dependent on them, because that feeds into their own competence. That feeds into their attachment style. They want to always feel needed. They want to feel that they are, that they can always help somebody, or they can always do something. And that's beautiful. However, some of that may also be rooted in unhealthy attachment. Some of that may also be rooted in cognitive distortions. Some of that may be rooted in our own feelings of inadequacy. But I have my child, right? My child will always be here for me. My child will always love me. My child will always need me. My child will always make me feel like I'm good. So when the child is ready to go off to college, we don't necessarily act like we want them to be independent, because the moment they are independent, it makes us have to look at ourselves differently. Who am I without my child in my life?
Right.
Actively, daily, what does that look like? And I see a lot of times where parents, they get concerned or they get scared about who they're going to be when their child leaves, that they actually cling to the child. And many kids end up staying close to home because they don't want their parents to feel alone, or they don't want their parents to feel without. Have you seen examples of that or things like that in the work that you've been doing with preparing college kids?
Yeah, because it's like, on one hand, the parent is like, I want you to go to college, I want you to be successful, and then on the other hand, I don't want you to leave. So which one is it?
Right.
At the end of the day, I had a conversation with one parent not too long ago, and it was just like, well, you instilled all these great values into your child. Like, your kid is a great kid. I think they'll be just fine. Now, some kids I worry about, some kids, I'm not gonna lie, I do worry about them. And I think my mom was probably worried about me too. But at the end of the day, they also knew that what they did as a parent, they did a great enough job with exposing me to different things and opportunities and raising me right with the proper values, to whereas though, of course, you're going to get a couple hiccups when you get to college. Life is perfect, but I'm going to be good and I'm going to be okay. And so, as a parent, if you want your child to be successful, when do you pull back?
Yeah.
When do you just trust in the Lord and hope for the best?
Right.
You've been raising this child for over 18 years now. You know what kind of kid you have.
Right.
So, and if it comes to the point where you're lonely, then you need to talk to Dr. Linnell.
I'm here, baby. I'm here for you.
If that's what it is, then you need to talk to Dr. Linnell, because you got some other issues. You got something else going on.
And you know what's funny about that, JB? It's also, yes, we gotta trust in the Lord and we gotta do our faith work, and we also have to trust in ourselves. you raised the child. Like you said, you raised them. You know what skills you instilled in them. You know which values you instilled in them. Sometimes I wonder if parents don't trust themselves, and that's why they haven't necessarily trusted other people, or they don't trust themselves. That's why they don't know if their child is ready. They don't know if they did a good job. And again, that's a parent insecurity issue that should not limit the child per se. You know what I mean? I have a child in my life who's really close to me, an amazing child, so much opportunity, so much ahead of her. And she's limited in thinking like, will I make friends at college? And what am I going to do because I'm so far away from home? And we've been talking about this for years, and still yet her final decision was to stay close to home. And I was so sad. I was like, there's so much out there in the world that you need to see, so much you can experience. But in that situation, I truly recognized that her own mental health was debilitating. It was actually causing her to not fulfill her potential. And it worries me. It worries me greatly. So when you see that happening with your students, your mentees, what are some ways that you've been addressing that with them when their fear is taken over?
I just continue to motivate them and empower them, right? I mean, especially because I know who they are. So for me, I'm like, no, you're getting away from here. You know, I can't. Yes, you can. And yes, you will. You know, change the words that your daily affirmations. If you keep saying can't, you will never be successful. It won't never work, right? But you can do this. Yes, it's going to be an adjustment, but life is an adjustment. When you go from one job to the next job, like, it's scary because at one job, I ain't really had to do nothing. But now if I want to make a little bit more money, I gotta do a little bit more work, right? So, you know, it's always a fear. And at the end of the day, you're not human if you don't have that butterfly, that fear, that hesitation, you know? And it's okay to feel like that. You're supposed to go through these emotions. But at the end of the day, you have to remind yourself that I worked for this. I prepared my entire life for this. This is what I want to do, you know, and this is who I want to be. And in order for me to get to that point, this is what I got to do.
For sure.
And it's never going to get easier. You're always going to have the same conversation with yourself, even with a boyfriend or a girlfriend. You know, like, oh man, is he good enough for me? Am I good enough for her?
I don't know.
It's always, you're always going to have those feelings. But what you do is you're like, you know what? Clearly he chose me. Like the school chose me. And clearly they believe in me.
Yeah, that's that imposter syndrome, right? Like adults talk about imposter syndrome as if that's just something that adults experience in their careers. But children experience that too. You know, am I good enough? Can I do this? And like you mentioned, a lot of that they actually need is validation. You are good enough. You can do this. You know, sometimes culturally, sometimes as Black folks, we're not always the most nurturing when it comes to our kids, right? We think about survival in terms of going straight forward and sometimes forgetting we need to tell our kids, you are good enough, you are excellent, you are worthy, you deserve this. And they need to hear it from us as their parents and mentors and aunties and godparents so much more, because the rest of society is telling them that they're not good enough. But they need, and so then they start questioning themselves. And it's so much more interesting at college because you're surrounded by greatness. Again, thinking about Howard or some of the other HBCUs and some of the PWIs too, no disrespect to any of the PWIs. But thinking about that people are surrounded by greatness, and in that period of adolescence, they're developing their identity generally off of comparison. So who they're seeing around them helps them determine if they're higher than or lower than, and what they need to do in the middle between all of that. It's part of the reason that I love college counselors. I love going to the counseling centers on college campuses and finding out who's there, because they have such a pivotal role in these young people's lives in terms of their mental health and their skill development and things like that as well.
But the sad thing is that that's not promoted, right? Like,
it's not
counseling on campus. How many times have I ever been to the Howard Counseling Center? I even know where the counseling center is.
Yeah, it's across the street from
it's where the School of C is, but it's like in the basement,
yes!
but it's like, I mean, these are things in conversations, right? Like mental health is, there's college counselors on campus, but a college kid isn't thinking about going to a college counselor.
No.
They're going to a friend. And then once they go to that hating ass friend, then they know the friend and spill their tea.
All the business out in the streets. Business out in the streets. And now you got to deal with the fact that whatever took you to the friend and the fact that all your business out in the streets.
Out in the street. And not only are you talking about the comparison of when you're at high school, it's the people you're following on social media. You've been felt inadequate. You didn't feel inadequate the moment you came to Howard University. You felt inadequate probably as a young little girl because you don't have a blonde wig. You don't you're not a Fashion Nova bag.
Yeah.
You know You're not a social media guru. You already had these feelings because before you got to college, now it's the social media era.
Yeah.
So even my students are dealing with it.
Yeah.
And I have to correct them like, no, when you're with Miss Jessica, you will not wear that.
You're right. That's right.
You will not do that. Like growing up, I know my mom is probably watching, but this is the first real time in my entire life. And this, that I've gotten hair color and I'm 31, like growing up, like I begged my mom to get a rinse. Girl, you better pray it was sunny outside so they could see it was like raspberry or wine. You know what I'm saying? Like, like if there wasn't no sun, they thought it was none. It was non-existent. And like, now you have kids that like, they're looking up to not me and you, right? They're looking up to these social media people who've never been in their shoes, who barely graduate, or in the words of one of my famous mentors, Dr. Brian Howard, they're sacrificing who they are personally to get to where they want to be professionally.
Yes, that's
and now some of these kids are not seeing college as a goal because I could wear this, start this website, and have people send me clothes or, make all this money or find this rich man that's going to buy me a Chanel bag.
Right.
And the thing is that we need to begin to, before college, where are the parents and the counselors before that time?
Yeah.
They're going through this social media era.
Yeah.
When they get to college, they feel good. You're still going to be a little leery because, you're going to school with really super rich kids. Like I remember the year these girls had on these Burberry rain boots,
Yeah.
And I ain't even have no regular pair of fisherman rain boots, And so I was like, man, like, I kind of felt inadequate.
Yeah.
Like I gotta have a pair of Burberry rain boots. But I mean, that was before social media. So I can't imagine what these students feel now. I have students spending their hard-earned money trying to find Burberry rain boots. Before they get to college because they have to show the social media and the world an image. I think we have to, before we even get to college, right? We have to go back. And us going back goes back to how is social media impacting the way our kids think?
That's right.
So how are the friends that our children are hanging around impact their trajectory?
That's right.
How does my parenting make sure that my child reaches their destiny? It's those factors that all have to add together in order to equal a child going to college and being successful. And they'll still reach a point of maybe we all need to feel validated, no matter how old we are. But it's an easier transition. If those things come on.
That's making me think about one of the classes I teach at Hopkins is called Counseling Adolescence. And the World Health Organization a few years ago redefined the age of adolescence from age 10 to 24. Historically, when I was growing up, adolescence was about 12 to 19, 20, right? But what the research is now showing is that children are entering into adolescence, which is a truly pivotal developmental stage, more pivotal than any of the other stages, because that's also where children learn independence, which has its pros and cons, right? But really thinking about at age 10, all the way up to 24, the adolescent brain is changing. So they're experiencing, their limbic system is activated. That's where all their senses are sensitive. That's where anything that they hear is more sensitive. Anything that they see, they're more sensitive about. Anything that they feel, they're more sensitive about. And then, but their frontal lobe isn't fully processed. So they're taking in all this information, but don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And then it goes into this amygdala, which is where all these feelings are. So not only are they overloaded by their senses, but then they have a feeling connected to all of it, but not necessarily a thought. Right. When you take that and you put a child in a brand new environment and have not prepared them for it, it can potentially create a disaster. Right. Which is why the preparation before college is so very important. I love your new book, the children's book that's talking about preparing for college and little kids. It's illustrated for young children, right? How they're for?
Probably we're looking at 5 to 10.
Yeah.
If you have some 5-year-olds that are very, very advanced.
Yeah.
And in the children's book, we have different activities and stuff. One of my favorites is a letter called Dear Future Me. So it's like, hi, today, my name is Dr. Plummer.
Yeah.
And XYZ years, I'm going to go to college or graduate high school. We need to start having this conversation with our kids early on. When they get to middle school, talking about college. Like, I know growing up for me, my parents did a phenomenal job with exposing me to different careers, being who they were. We went to political parties. We went to college. We did, we traveled the world. By the time I was 16, I lived in Beijing for 9 weeks by myself. So I lived in Beijing at 16 by myself. At that point in time, going to college, my mother didn't mind. Or I went to, I don't know if you've ever heard, the oldest Black camp in the country is called Camp Atwater. 4 weeks for 4 or 5 years, up there by myself. I didn't have a cell phone. We had to learn how to write. We had to swim in the lake. It was the best times of my life. And because of those experiences, it fostered my independence.
Yeah.
I also think parents need to start exposing their kids more to different opportunities, getting involved and signing them up to be a part of different opportunities, so that when college comes, you don't have that fear.
Yeah. It's and as we talk about that prep work, look, I think that it'll decrease some of the mental health issues that we're seeing right at those transition periods. Not just for the student, but also for their parents. So as we were talking, I was thinking there's probably 4 main buckets that parents really need to think about when they're preparing their children for college. That first bucket being those thoughts. How do you help your child develop thoughts for success? How do you help them ensure that they are glass half full people, that they have growth mindsets, that they understand what they are capable of, and that even if they have a growth opportunity or they have a weakness in a particular area, that is not the definition or the root of who they are. It's just a piece of who they are. So I think that parents need to really, as we're preparing the children, the transition, we need to be thinking about thoughts. I think we also need to be thinking about skills around time management, skills around budgeting, skills around conversations, problem solving skills, communication skills, advocating skills. I think we also, and in those skills, also thinking about skills related to decision making. And when I'm talking about these skills, I'm not just talking about as role modeling and hoping that our kids picked up on the information. I'm also talking about being explicit. This is the 4-step problem solving process. Let's talk about it. I also think that one of the other buckets needs to be around social systems, support systems, because once you leave home, my kids have their aunties here and my line sisters who are additional aunties to them and cousins and things like that. But once they leave this area, this DC area, who is going to be their support system in this new state? Sure, I could call up some sorors and be like, hey, can y'all look out for my daughter, etc. But how do they develop their own support system? How do they identify who has their back? Which professor could be their mentor? If their advisor is a good advisor for them, how do they develop the skills and the knowledge of how to pick a good friend, not just a friend that we approve of as parents and godparents, but how do you identify that for yourself and move forward? And then that last piece being in that preparation. How do you truly prepare for college on a spiritual level? And how do you prepare for it on an existential level? How do you prepare for it as you think about your future, who you are going to be and how you want to be that way? So again, in our conversation, I'm like, there's probably 4 main buckets that parents really need to be doing. And I think that parents' anxiety will decrease as they see their children moving through these 4 buckets. I know they have the skills to do this. I know they have the thoughts to do this. I know we've already identified how to create support systems. I know they are understanding their worth and their value and their purpose. What do you think about that?
And the first bucket was the one that was very important. It was that positivity piece. And when you said, it brought me back to, I don't know if you saw the viral Instagram post where it was a little like 3 or 4-year-old Black boy, and he's on his way to school, and I think it's the mom or the dad is telling him like, I know I can, and he's saying his affirmations every day on the way to school.
Yes.
So like those are things that as a parent we should be teaching our kids. You wake up in the morning, Dr. Linnell, you're beautiful.
Thank you, God.
Make you feel, and inadequate. You can do anything. You're a star. Your future is bright. These are things that kids have to, us as parents or their mentors or people that they look up to, we have to instill in them, right? Because their friends are not going to say, girl, you really look beautiful, because they probably like, girl, you look cute. And I was like, oof, her hair really messed up. It's not genuine, right?
Right.
So us as parents, or mentors, we need to, that step 1 is everything, because like you said, that's that validation piece. That's like, oh, okay, my friends don't think I'm cute. Shoot, my mama done been told me I'm cute, I'm beautiful, I'm this, I'm that. And
goodness, people, I don't know what happened. That's JB, that is what's happening when it comes to this technology. Sometimes it just has a mind of its own and starts acting up and tripping and everything. So I'm glad we are able to get right back on here. So do you remember where you were? I think we were talking about positive mindset as the foundation. So kids feel competent when it's time to go to college. And it starts as early as you were mentioning, the young boy with his big backpack. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, he had a really big backpack. Poor man.
And little bitty body, but he was a young king in the making. You felt his energy, he believed in what he said. So you were saying that you believe that the language, the positive affirmations is the foundation to ensuring that your children are successful in college.
Yeah, I mean, it starts the moment you have a child.
Yeah,
it's not preparing for college or thinking about paying for college. Even that you can't start freshman year of high school.
Yeah,
you should be starting from the beginning. The moment that's why I ain't got no kids. I ain't got no kids. Okay. Because when these children are born, you need to make sure that you have some type of financial stability,
right,
in terms of planning, for their future, and so it is so important that early on those positive affirmations starts. Early on, you begin to save for college. Early on, if you as a parent, if you feel inadequate, you need to go get you some help.
Yes.
Because all you're going to do is instill your craziness into the child, and then they'll never feel adequate.
Yeah.
Feel because there's some problems that you're dealing with that you're instilling into your child.
Yeah.
That makes them second guess themselves, and your child is a reflection of you.
Yeah.
With you wrapping up with those 4 buckets, I think you pretty much summed up our whole conversation.
Yeah. And what we've also realized in the mental health field is that what we say to children when they're young becomes their own self-talk. What they constantly hear becomes what they say to themselves. So because when they're small, when they're 3, they're 4, they don't know their level of competence. They don't know if they can do certain things. They only know what what the opportunities are being presented to them, small opportunities, right? Like go and get the remote. Oh, they bring the remote back. Oh, you're such a good listener. Oh, I really appreciate how you helped me out. Oh, mommy really values you. And if we're hearing that all the time, then we start believing, oh, I'm really a good helper. Oh, I'm really a part of this family. Oh, I can really do these things. And it does start with that piece there. I wish my parents had a lot more money to pay for me to go to college. That's not really what they always told me I was going to college. And I actually got my degree, my bachelor's degree, and then both my parents went and got their bachelor's degree. I got my master's degree, and then my daddy went back and got his master's degree. So I think I got to serve as a role model for them in those regards. But they didn't have a lot of money for me to pay to go to college. But going back to those 4 buckets, where they didn't have the money, and that's where you step in, right? Like how to get this money to go to college. Where they didn't have the money, they did teach me to think positively about myself. They did prepare me in terms of my skill development. They did help me identify support systems and remind me of what my purpose was in this world. So again, I do think those 4 bucket areas are truly important, with that heavy foundation in how we speak to our children early in life is going to make them feel that they can actually be competent once they get into the new college environment, which is going to cause a culture shock, an identity shift, make them question a lot of things about themselves, but their root is going to be in that self-talk and positive thinking. Tell the folks a little bit about who you are, what College Gurl is, what the foundation is doing, the names of these books. Please put it in the chat. We'll make sure that it gets out on all the social media. I got my copies already. The hat came out. I was like, I need my College Gurl hat. I need my books, whatever we're doing. So tell everybody so they can be all cute and fashionable, just like you.
Of course, I'm Jessica Brown, also known as College Gurl. I educate students and families around the country on how to make the best informed decisions on paying for college through my book, How to Pay for College When You're Broke. It is on Amazon. However, I also sell autographed copies for $20, and I mail them out. So if you like an autographed copy, you can email info@collegegurl.com, and the girls with a U, or you can DM me at collegegurljb on Instagram. Or of course, that's our Facebook as well. And of course, I can't just educate older students on paying for college without instilling into younger kids the importance of going to college and thinking about their future. And in my new children's book, College Gurl's First College Tour, this is all about getting students to begin thinking about college early and reminding them that their future is bright. And not only is this a children's book, but it's also, and there's activities and discussions that parents and teachers can do. So if you are a teacher and you are listening, I would definitely incorporate this into your into your coursework for your students. Additionally, outside of being regular College Gurl, I'm the president of the College Gurl Foundation, which mentors and serves underserved, low-income minority students within Washington, D.C. We expose them to college, careers, mentoring, and scholarship opportunities. These kids are beating tremendous odds to get to where they are and be the first in their families, for some to graduate high school and go off to college. It is really important for me to do this work and help these students because these students need to understand that anything is possible, but they don't have the right role models to guide them and show them the way. So through that, I actually do in-person college tours. We do virtual college tours and take the kids out of the city, many of them for the first time. So through those 2 major roles, it's really important for me to, in general, just make sure I remind students around the nation that their future is bright and that they can do anything that they put their mind to.
Yes, I am so proud of you, always so proud of you. Excited for the work that you're doing. I've been a big fan for years now, right?
Yes.
Even before we had the wonderful opportunity of joining our beautiful, illustrious sorority of Delta Sigma Theta. Even before that time, I had the opportunity to interact and follow your work, and I'm super impressed with what you're doing and how you're creating pathways. I also think it's important, before we end, I also think it's important that you tell the audience about the conference that you do in the fall, right? So that folks can put it on their radar and start thinking about that. I think last year you did it with the support of the Steve Harvey Foundation. Yes. But if you could let folks know about that just a little bit so that parents can start, especially parents whose children are this year freshmen, sophomores, juniors, can start really thinking about how to tap into some of these resources. So by the time their child is a senior, they are already on the path. So tell us a little bit about the conference that you do every fall.
So normally we do in-person college tours, but because of COVID, we had to pivot. So now we are offering a virtual college tour. So even when life does come back to normal, we'll do in-person college tours, but we're still going to do this virtual tour that is accessible to students around the nation. Students will be able to interact with different institutions, university officials, college students, Dr. Plummer, and different organizations that support college preparedness, college readiness, and going off to college. That normally takes place between late October, early November. We have different institutions that will serve on there. Many students, they were accepted into college on our live events. Yeah. Scholarships from these institutions from our live events. So please be sure that you're following my social media channels to see when that opportunity will become available. And before then, we are doing a virtual scholarship ceremony for our students who are part of the foundation. We have about 8 graduates this year, have a posse scholar, and many, I believe almost all of them are going to college on a full ride because College Girl is their mentor. So, but they still have some other costs to pay. Computers, traveling, things like that. So we are raising money for our students. So if you find it in your heart to support our mission and who we are and our students, please go to collegegurlfoundation.org and donate to this charitable cause. It takes a village to raise a child, and we are all working together to all reach the common goal to create a world of promise and opportunities for our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. I love it so much. I love it so much. So thank you for coming and spilling the tea with me, Dr. P, as we talked about mental health in college and preparing our children, but also for parents to prepare themselves, so that the impact of having their child leaving their house doesn't feel as intense, right? It doesn't feel as acute, that we are all preparing ourselves to allow our children to transition from that chrysalis into that butterfly and create additional beauty in this world. So for those of you guys that are watching and listening, of course, you can get in contact with us on our website, onyxtherapygroup.com. We have wonderful clinicians that are there providing mental health services. We have wonderful educators and trainers and consultants that go into the different schools, universities, government agencies, local government, federal government agencies, and prepare and to do training and curriculum development around mental health in all types of industries and work. And of course, our sourcing. So if you need a counselor on site at your location, at your job, we provide that sourcing as well. So definitely hit us up on our website. Follow us on Instagram. We are Onyx Therapy Group. You can feel free to follow me too. I'm Mahogany Sunshine. Doesn't it make sense with my deep mahogany skin and my bright personality? So Mahogany Sunshine is my IG. And I so appreciate you, Jessica, for coming out and hanging out with me and spilling the tea.
Thank you for the invite to spill the tea. I can't wait to spill some more.
Listen, girl, honey. Okay.